Welcome back to the Kevin O'Connor Show. Today we got Tom Haberstroh talking about the Warriors and Wolves game and the NBA draft lottery. We're going to preview that. Tom, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, man. Doing better than Anthony Edwards' ankle, man.
I know. That was a little bit of a scare. It looked pretty bad. He's getting helped off the floor before the second half. Of course, he returned in the second half for the Wolves and what was a 117-93 win for Minnesota in game two, a must-win game two after they just absolutely botched game one with Stephen Curry sidelined in that game. And they started out great. 13-0 run to begin the game. Quentin Post started for the Warriors. Steve Kerr benches him, doesn't play again. And yet, midway through the third quarter, Tom, you're texting me, here we go, because the Warriors cut it to 7. But you know what? It didn't matter. The Wolves responded. They blew the lead up to 25, won the game by 24. And here we are with a series tied 1-1 with Stephen Curry out with who knows when he's going to come back with the hammy. And Anthony Edwards now with a turned ankle. He returned in the game, but it still didn't look good. This series, I still don't know exactly what to expect moving forward in the series, considering the injuries on both sides. I still think Golden State has a shot. Do you?
Yeah, I do. But let's just make one thing clear here, Kev. Steve Kerr punted this game. Punted it. He was playing with his food the entire time. Look, when you look at the lineups that he rolled out in this game, it's very clear to me that he was looking to this was a preseason game for him. 14 players played in that first half, which set a playoff record dating back to 1998, according to ESPN's research. We haven't seen a first half rollout of 14 players in a playoff game since we started tracking this back in 1998. Steve Kerr, it was very clear from the get-go, the energy from the players was responding to the energy of Steve Kerr starting Quentin Post and then playing some of these lineups that have never seen the floor this season. And I understand why he's doing it, just kind of experimenting with different looks. But this is kind of what he did in game 2 against Houston. And Kev, it worked out in that series. And I'm positive he was not trying to win this game as hard as he normally would. I think going up 1-0 in that first game gave him some cushion here to rest his guys. And it was clear that Jimmy Butler was following Steve Kerr's lead and not being aggressive because I think they all knew they were playing with house money after going up 1-0.
Yeah, but why? I don't understand it. Like,
look at the Knicks. Look at what the Knicks did in game 2. And then look at what the Warriors did in game 2. Diametric opposite philosophies from Tom Thibodeau and Steve Kerr.
But that's what I'm saying. But why? Like you have a shot. Minnesota played horribly in game 1. If you go into game 2 with the expectation, well, we're going to get just throttled this game. They have to have a bounce back. Oh, 7 points in the third quarter. I just feel like it's a silly decision if Steve Kerr was indeed punting. I don't necessarily feel that. Like I feel like he was probably just throwing darts, figuring out what's going to work in this game, what's going to work moving forward into the series. And if that could also be him being willing to lose the game. Like to your point, he might be willing to drop this one in order to find data that could help moving forward in the series with or without Stephen Curry. And it seems like he'll be out. I'd be surprised if he's back sooner than game 5, but probably more likely game 6 when they have that longer break between 5 and 6, if it gets to that point. But that's the thing. Like it might not get to that point if you're punting these games earlier in the series. And ultimately, Tom, 14 guys in the first half is absolutely crazy. And you mentioned Jimmy Butler following Steve Kerr's lead. I don't know, man. Like, am I overly critical? Am I in the wrong here to be underwhelmed by Jimmy Butler here? This is what you got him for. You got him for games like this where Steph is either having a bad night or Steph is out entirely. And Jimmy Butler 7 for 20 in game 1. Of course, they win. 6 of 13 in game 2. I know he had the injury during the Houston series, but he's been overall, I mean, pretty I mean, he's not like this playoff Jimmy that he's hyped as, which by the way is more of a myth. He hasn't had this dominant game in a closeout game for like 10 or so games now. I'm a little bit underwhelmed with quote unquote playoff Jimmy.
Yeah, when is playoff Jimmy going to show up? That's my question. Because this was the opportunity, was going up 1-0, and you know that you have that long layoff before game 6. If you win 2 games here, you're basically guaranteeing yourself a game 6, right? And so this was a big opportunity and a big decision from not just Steve Kerr, but Jimmy Butler. Every time he got downhill and got at the rim, he was passing out of that situation. He was making business decisions every single time he got into the paint. And it's something that Nate Duncan astutely pointed out a couple weeks ago on X, pointing out that Jimmy Butler, unless he's able to get a foul call, he has zero interest in taking a contested layup. Like, he will not do it. So many times in this game, and so many times we've seen in this postseason, Jimmy Butler will not attack the rim in traffic unless he knows he can get the foul call. So many times he goes in and he just does this wraparound pass to the perimeter. And how many times did we see a shot clock violation in this game? A lot of those were because Jimmy Butler is not willing to take these shots. He had a 23% usage rate in this game. He has not had a 30% usage rate as a member of the Golden State Warriors. Last year, he had 9 games north of a 30% usage rate, which means he uses 30% of his team possessions to try to score when he's on the floor. That is down to 1 this season. He had 9 30 usage rate games last year, just 1 this year, and it wasn't in a Golden State uniform. And this is when you want to do it, is when Stephen Curry is going to be out for the game. And it was clear that Jimmy Butler was just like, I'm not going to try too hard. And I wonder how much that when he landed on his rear end, how much that kind of impacts the way he's attacking the rim, because I don't think he wants to be left in the air anymore. And I think you're seeing similar things over on the other end with Anthony Edwards. Those injuries are a lot more mental than they are physical sometimes.
Yeah, and that could be part of it with Jimmy Butler. I mean, but ultimately, I'm still like thinking about the game where Amen Thompson locks down Stephen Curry towards the end of the regular season, and Jimmy Butler did nothing. Like, it was just, he was like this prior to the injury. Sometimes he's been like this after the injury, and it's just a frustration with watching Jimmy Butler. And I would imagine that as a Warriors fan, it'd be incredibly frustrating as well, because these are the games you got him to take over to give you an opportunity to win. And I don't feel like he's asserting himself in the way that he needs to. Ultimately, though, you're right. The injury has to be a factor here. The fear of worsening that injury. And that means you have a 0% chance as the season wears on instead of just a slim chance. But now with the Anthony Edwards injury, he did come back in the second half. Like, we need to make that clear. But it's different when you're running off of adrenaline, you're in the middle of the game, and then you're only going to have 1 day off before game 3, and you have a flight to go out to the Bay Area to play Golden State. That's undeniably a concern. But with that said, I'd be surprised if it's something that holds him out, Tom. Like, you would think that he would have been held out tonight when they have a big lead if it were something that's going to last deeper into the series. Wouldn't you feel the same way?
Yeah, I was surprised he came out for the second half, given the way that he was walking gingerly off the floor. Couldn't put any weight on that. And it was looking pretty dire, dude. Like, I was watching this and worried that he would be out for the rest of the postseason. And then he comes back. I want to know what happened in that training room. Like, the medical staff just made a miracle happen where he wasn't able to put any weight on it. Yeah. Like, we don't know exactly, but it worked for the time being to kill the pain, or to at least give him the strength to play and to dunk in the second half. We saw him finishing stronger around the rim. It wasn't necessarily in traffic, but this is what you wanted to see from Anthony Edwards in the second half. Question is tomorrow, the swelling on an eversion. Look, when you're dealing with an eversion where your ankle folds in, not out, that potentially causes a lot more pain and a lot more soreness. When we're dealing with, that's the second time that's happened. LeBron James falling on him in the first round, and a similar thing happened to that same ankle where it rolled inward rather than rolling on the outside of that ankle. And that's typically, just covering this league, typically that has a longer layoff. And I bet in the regular season, he's not coming out for that second half. Like, he's not playing in the second half, and you probably would see him missing several games, given that this is the second time it's happened in the last couple weeks. So Anthony Edwards, I'm a little worried about his mental, his psychological attacks at the rim. Like, what's going on when he's missing a lot of these bunnies, dude? Like, I'm watching some of these layups that he's taking, and it's just he's missing them badly. And I don't want to say he's at the yips portion of this kind of journey, but he missed 7 of his layups in game 1, and he missed a couple bunnies in this one where it's just unlike him. And Stan Van Gundy was calling this out in the middle of the game, was just, he wasn't himself. And I wonder how much that ankle is playing a part upstairs.
According to Synergy Sports, in the playoffs so far this postseason, he is shooting 46.4% on layups at the basket. It's not good. It's not good, Tom. And that, I think that is updated to include tonight's stats already as well. 46.4% for Ant in the postseason. And compared to the regular season, that number is 56.4%.
Higher than that.
So look, yes, much higher than that. So 10% higher, and that includes all shots, not just in the half court. I see it too, and I think Van Gundy was in the right to point that out as well. Is it mental? Is it something physical? Some combination? It probably is some type of combination. It all is related after all. But ultimately, for Minnesota, like, there's no Steph. There's no Steph. So, like, you have to still be feeling good overall moving forward in the series. Even though Gobert, you see him at the end of the game rubbing his head as well after he got bumped earlier in the game. I mean, it's a long postseason, man. Sometimes it is just the healthiest team. And this, unfortunately, in what is a great postseason with a lot of unbelievable games, thrilling games, this is the one series where it's like, too bad. Too bad it couldn't be better. I mean, my favorite thing from the day involving the Warriors and the Wolves had nothing to do with the game. It was the video of Draymond Green getting shots up prior to the game at shoot-around this morning, and one of the Warriors staffers is wearing a Gobert jersey. I just appreciate the level of pettiness and hatred that Draymond has for Rudy Gobert. My guy, I get his signed jersey over my left shoulder, Rudy Gobert, but I appreciate Draymond Green.
Yo, can we talk about this Draymond Rudy Gobert thing? Because it is very real, and it was very clear to me that Draymond Green wanted to get himself ejected in that game. It's Stan Van Gundy was advocating in the middle of the game for Draymond Green to go to the locker room for a timeout. Like, I've never heard this before. A former NBA coach on the air was advocating for a player because he was too emotional and too heated and was blowing his gasket to take a timeout, a personal timeout, to go in the locker room and blow off some steam and then come back. I've never seen that. I've never seen that before, Kev, in all my years covering and watching the league. I think he needs to remove himself from the vicinity and cool down. I've never seen it. And after that technical, they called it a technical because he has three technicals left before he gets suspended. They give him a technical, not a flagrant, even though it was excessive. It was a physical thing. It wasn't that he was drawing at a ref. This was a flagrant, but he only had 2 flagrants left over before he gets suspended. I wonder how much that played into this, that the league doesn't want to step in and say, like, hey, we don't want to force a suspension here with Draymond Green. We don't want to pull a guy off the floor based on too many techs or too many flagrants. I'm very confused, like, what constitutes a technical foul, and how that, when he's flailing his arm like that against Naz Reid at his head, at his dome, then that is not a flagrant. And I wonder how much of the whole tally of the technicals and the flagrants, how that played into a part in the adjudication of that. Because Draymond Green, that seemed like a flagrant, but it seemed like they were afraid to give him a flagrant because that would mean one more flagrant and then he gets suspended.
It did seem like they were afraid to give him the flagrant. One thing I want to point out, a negative trend here for the Warriors for going back, 4 games at this point now. Moses Moody has not made a field goal since the 127 mark of the third quarter of Game 6 against the Rockets. He was 0 for 5 in Game 2 tonight against Minnesota, 0 for 4 in Game 1, 0 for 5 in Game 7 against Houston, 0 for 1 in the fourth quarter of Game 6. What has gone on with Moses Moody after he had a massive Game 5, for the Warriors and what was a loss against Houston, but a massive game 5. It's a problem for Golden State. We're talking earlier about Jimmy Butler, how he's not quite asserting himself. Other young guys on this team are up and down, Moses Moody included. If you're Steve Kerr, this kind of circles back to where our conversation began with playing 14 guys. What is there to rely on this team? What is there to rely on? So unless Steph has some miracle recovery and he's able to come back from a hamstring injury, which is a risky thing to come back from quickly, which I don't see happening for the long term for him as well. And never mind if they were to advance, it could knock him out the rest of the postseason. You can't rush hamstrings. Unless there's a miracle recovery here for him, I just don't see the path to victory for Golden State. I just don't see it. Is there a path, Tom, that I might be missing here?
I thought it was a lot of Kevon Looney and him owning the boards and playing big and playing that lineup, but Steve Kerr thought otherwise. He was like, no, we're going away from that. We're going to try all these crazy lineups with Pat Spencer. Kevin Knox was dusted off for this game in order to play in a winnable game. A winnable game, dude. And it was like, I'm watching this.
Legend.
Kentucky Wildcat, Kevin Knox. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, Moses Moody, if there was a G League, he belongs there right now. He's lost all his confidence. Did you see that 2-on-2 fast break? I'm not even saying that pejoratively. I'm saying he needs to build back his confidence. He looks completely lost out there. There was that 2-on-2 fast break where he did this midi floater thing that didn't even touch the rim. And I was like, what was that? That was one of the worst shots I've seen all season, where it's a 2-on-2 fast break and he didn't know what he wanted to do and he just kind of shot putted it and it soared off the rim by 3 feet. And Moses Moody was a guy who's starting for the Warriors at the start of this postseason. He's a guy who is 5th on the Warriors in minutes. He's a key member of this Warriors team, and he's missed 16 straight shots, Kev. 16 straight shots. He hasn't made a single shot dating back to what you said in that game 6 in the third quarter. He's missed everything since. So I think he's unplayable right now. And Moses Moody on that 2-time line with Jonathan Kuminga. Finally, we had the Jonathan Kuminga game. Finally he broke out. But that Moses Moody thing is a very real problem.
He breaks out and he's a -8. Classic Jonathan Kuminga game.
Yeah. In a blowout, he has his he puts up his numbers and he goes to his agent. He's like, "You think I can get the bag this summer?" I don't know, man. This 2-timeline thing was a huge mistake by the Golden State Warriors, and you're seeing just the in and out roller coaster of Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. How many years are we into this thing now? And they can't be depended on consistently in the postseason. And they held on to them too long when they had much higher value last year, the year before, and they held on to him. I mean, Pascal Siakam could probably be on the Warriors right now if it weren't for basically holding on to, and there were reports tonight that Joe's just going nuts when Jonathan Kuminga was doing anything resembling positive because that's their guy. But man, too little, too late.
All right, Tom. Game 3 of Warriors and Wolves is on Saturday. Let's talk about some future draft busts like Jonathan Kuminga and Kevin Knox, and some steals and some home runs as well. With the NBA draft lottery, that's a low blow. I apologize. Let's talk about the draft.
It's late. You know,
it is. I mean, it's not false. It's the truth. Let's talk about the NBA draft lottery coming on Monday night. Monday night in Chicago. Little lottery balls are going to be bouncing around in a locked up room with a representative from every team and media members, all of them praying to the basketball gods for the opportunity to draft Cooper Flagg from Maine, the great white hope, Cooper Flagg, to their franchise. And Tom, my first question for you to preview the draft lottery. Between Utah, Washington, and Charlotte, they're the 3 teams that had below 20 wins. They're the 3 teams with 14% flattened odds for a chance at the number 1 pick. Of the Jazz, the Wizards, and the Hornets, who needs Cooper Flagg the most?
I know I'm biased because I'm a resident of Charlotte, North Carolina, but they haven't won a playoff series since 2002. They've never been to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is a franchise that has never had a guy like this. They've missed out on so many number one overall picks in huge years. I mean, the most recent one being Anthony Davis, Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Davis. This continues to happen where they miss out on these generational prospects. And this is a franchise with new ownership, new front office, new head coach. And I do think this team, unlike Washington, where they've had talent go through that door or had playoff series wins, they're not, a beacon of competence and prosperity in Washington or in Utah, but they at least have had good playoff teams in recent memory. The Charlotte Hornets have not. And you get the guy from Duke down the street. I know there would be some weird vibes here in Charlotte, which is more predominantly UNC Chapel Hill. Even still, after Michael Jordan sold the team and no longer run by Mitch Kupchak and Buzz Peterson, still, this is a very much a UNC Chapel Hill region, but Cooper Flagg is the real deal. And I think Charlotte Hornets to restock the talent. And I don't know if the fit with LaMelo Ball is perfect, but I get with everything that we've seen from Cooper Flagg, this dude does not have any holes in his game. And so on one hand is LaMelo Ball and the way that he had the highest usage rate and field goal attempts rate in like NBA history this season. I know that's not a real fact. Don't fact check me on that. But is Cooper Flagg going to be needed anywhere else more than he is in the Charlotte Hornets franchise? I would say no, given how bankrupt the win columns and any sort of playoff success is for this franchise. It's Cooper Flagg in Charlotte. That's the biggest need.
Washington trended up this past year. They have some good things going on there. Utah has a ton of young talent already. To me, Charlotte is the right answer for the franchise that needs them the most. I think you're right, Tom. I don't think you're being biased here. I think it's the truth. I think all three of them need him really badly.
They do.
But if one needs him the most, I think it's Charlotte. I do think it's Charlotte. They're the team, I mean, with the most questions as well when it comes to kind of their young star. LaMelo's already getting it paid as well. There's questions about his future, how reliable he can be. Is that contract going to be something they want to keep moving forward? And whereas with Washington, it feels like they're trending up. They could use a point guard like Dylan Harper at number 2. Utah could use some of the guys that are behind Cooper Flagg as well. Whereas I think Charlotte, they really, really need a stabilizing force. And not to mention for them, you can look at the good things in Charlotte. You can look at Brandon Miller. You can look at, if you do view LaMelo Ball as a positive, neither of those guys are leaders. They're just not. They might be good ball players, but they're not leaders of a locker room. That's what Cooper Flagg is. And that's what would, I think, really give that franchise the shape it needs to be something really special moving forward. And that's what's interesting about the teams that don't get number 1 here. Because personally, when it comes to like what's going to be most exciting, what's going to be the funnest result to talk about, to me, the team that ends up number 2, I hope that team already has a point guard. I hope it's somebody like Houston, where it's like they are, maybe not Houston's not a good example. They don't necessarily have a point guard, but they don't have a lot of good shooters on their team. So Dylan Harper's iffy there. New Orleans, they have Zion. Would Dylan Harper be a fit there? Some of these teams like Charlotte as well, if they already have LaMelo Ball, is Dylan Harper a guy that they would want to take there? But to me, some of these teams that don't necessarily need Dylan Harper at number 2, I think that would create a lot of interesting trade up conversation or trade down conversation, which would make for a really, really interesting draft cycle leading up to the draft over the next 6 or 7 weeks. Because Dylan Harper, everybody I talk to in the NBA, in all likelihood, he's going number 2. I don't see anybody jumping him at number 2. It's more a matter of would a team trade up if the team at number 2 just doesn't want him. That's my impression there, Tom. In relation to the Hornets, do you think that they would take a point guard next to LaMelo Ball, or would they be the type of team that would perhaps look for a trade down?
Everything I heard at the deadline was like this LaMelo Ball franchise cornerstone under the previous ownership and under the current ownership remains that franchise cornerstone. So it is a question to me is, can you bring in a guy like Dylan Harper alongside LaMelo Ball or next to Brandon Miller? Does that even work? I suspect if he's on the board, I don't think they go for Ace Bailey. I don't think, for me, maybe the best fit is VJ Edgecombe. Like, I love that dude. The numbers jump out to me on him, and I like him as a better fit than Dylan Harper. But the thing that my heart is tugging on right now, and the tension I'm having, is that I love second gen prospects. I love them. I did the study last year. Legacy players are underrated in the draft, more underrated than any other program. When you look at how they perform relative to their draft slot, second gen guys just exceed expectations across the board. And a guy like him or Jason Richardson's son, Jace, I do think that some value is in these guys that may not have performed well, but they're super young, super talented, and very efficient in the case of Jace Richardson. One guy, Ace Bailey, I don't see it with him. If he wasn't able to kind of turn in that athleticism and that height and that size into a winning team with Dylan Harper at Rutgers, I'm not taking him if I'm rebuilding right now. Like, that might be a project, but I don't see it with him when you're that size. I know that they have a lot of like Tracy McGrady. I don't think KD is the right guy here. But this talent didn't even translate at Rutgers.
No, and it didn't lead to winning basketball. I know he got better over the course of the season with some of the other stuff, looked for the pass more, defended a bit harder, but I currently have Ace Bailey number 3 on the public draft board. In all likelihood, I'm moving him down once I do my update on Monday after the draft lottery. I haven't finalized my rankings yet, but and also, like, one of the most popular comps for Ace Bailey, Tom, is Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. had a flamethrower jumper in high school. Like, he was an elite shooter, and he still is an elite shooter to this day. Like, Michael Porter Jr. gets the 6'10" Klay Thompson comp for a reason. Ace Bailey was not an elite shooter at Rutgers. He was not an elite shooter in high school. He's a theoretical shooter who catches fire sometimes and hits these crazy mid-range turnaround jumpers and all that, but he hasn't been consistently an elite shooter from the field or from the line. And so that's where my biggest question with him is like, is this guy just all theoretical? And with guys like that, unless you're certain teams, I think, can afford that risk. Some teams, maybe you do want to take a risk for a guy like that and just, maybe a whiff on it and so be it. You still feel good about your positioning with where you are and how you're building your franchise out. Like, if Houston moves up to number 4, maybe you just take a huge swing and screw it. Maybe it works out if you can't find a trade. Some team like that. But if you're Washington, can you afford to miss? If you're Brooklyn, can you afford to miss? If you're Philly, can you afford to miss when you're in this position right now? I think there's a lot of teams this year that they can't afford to miss. And that's what's going to make, after number 2, assuming Harper goes number 2, after number 2, 3, 4, and beyond, who really knows where some of these guys are going to end up landing? It's really, beauty is in the eye of the beholder for a lot of these prospects this year. And that's why for some of these teams, I think they're under more pressure. Like, who needs Cooper the most at number 1, but also who needs to just move up? Daryl Morey, I think he's probably going to be the most stressed person in the NBA on Monday night because their pick is top 6 protected. They only have a 64% chance of keeping it. Otherwise, it goes to Oklahoma City. They have the 5th best odds of moving into the top 4. And as I said, a 64% chance of keeping it in the top 6 entirely. If Philly loses that pick, Tom, I mean, Daryl's hot seat, that temperature's turning up because it's going to be a hell of a lot harder for him to reshape things however he wants to. I think him more than anybody is under the most pressure. Is there anybody else that comes to mind to you who would be nearly under as much pressure as Daryl Morey?
No. It's clearly him. I mean, that top 6 protected pick is the most important, thing that we're going to watch outside of where Cooper Flagg goes. Like, after we figure out who goes number 1, I want to see what happens with the Philadelphia 76ers, where they pivot here, because a lot of this depends on Joel Embiid. A lot of this depends on Paul George and the health of Jared McCain. Like all of these pieces right now, if you're Daryl Morey, like I don't know how much information you have to make an informed decision here. Like the fact that you don't know Joel Embiid's future in terms of his injury history, Paul George at this stage of his career, are you in win now mode or are you looking at Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey? That's the timeline we got to build around. It is a very difficult proposition because we know Daryl Morey is always big game fishing. Like he is always a guy that believes in we just need James Harden and Dwight Howard together. We need two super duper stars in order to win championships. Tried it again with Paul George and Joel Embiid, and they never saw the floor together. And how much is that going to inform his decision on what to do if they lose that top 6 protected pick? And what happens if they do get it, but it's at 5 or 6? Like, what kind of talent can you bring in here? There's not, as far as I can tell, Kev, prove me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's not like a ready now veteran, a junior, a senior, a 21-year-old or 22 that you can confidently pick in the top 5 and say, like, I know I'm going to get a guy who's ready to step in right away and help us win basketball games next season. There isn't that prospect, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like in theory, VJ Edgecombe should be that, but he wasn't that for Baylor in the tournament. He wasn't that. Like it's just in theory, 3-and-D guy. Con Knippel out of Duke, maybe he's the closest thing. You know, he can come in and bang down some shots, makes good decisions, plays hard on defense. I think Knippel's probably the best answer there. I don't really think anybody else would even qualify for that. You know, I'm just racking my brain through Jeremiah.
It's a young draft. It's a young lottery.
Super young, right? Exactly. Super young lottery. I mean, like, you know, Malawach, he 0 rebounds in his final game for Duke. Derek Queen needs to improve his defense and shooting. Like a lot of these guys, it's going to be multiple years until there's something. And I think for a team like Philly, that's why you're going to see them look to possibly trade that pick. And that's the next thing I just want to talk to you about here, Tom. The last thing before we go, which team landing in the top 2 do you think would have the greatest implications on the superstar trade market? Because Sixers are obvious. Who else comes to mind for you that, like, if they land in the top 2, okay, maybe we're seeing a big superstar trade here?
Well, it's Houston. If Houston gets
even if it's number 1, or are they keeping number 1? That's like the little difficulty here. If it's number 1, are you really trading
the number 1 pick? Like, who would trade number 1? Like, is there anyone who would trade the opportunity to take in Cooper Flagg?
I don't think so.
I don't think there's anybody. I don't think there's anybody.
I don't think so. I mean, I guess like who's the best player available? Like in theory, let's just say it's Philly. Like Philly gets the number 1 pick, and odds are they're taking Cooper Flagg. But who's like the best guy that could shockingly become available? Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's probably like, is he the best? I don't think so. And you're not trading 1 for him.
He's keeping Cooper Flagg because that is a lease that you can build around a Cooper Flagg and extend your job stability a lot more. His job security, if he gets Cooper Flagg, just skyrocket.
I agree.
Any GM who can have the opportunity to draft that prospect, you're golden, right? You're golden. So I feel like no one's going to trade Cooper Flagg if they get it.
So it's and I would
say if it's number 2, if Houston jumps to number 2, I think you can bet that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be a Houston Rocket. Like that would be the thing that would grease the wheels and get this conversation done. Is Milwaukee wants to restock. There's probably going to be a 3-team trade here. I would imagine they want to get their picks back from New Orleans. If New Orleans gets the number 2 pick here, maybe there's some sort of deal where they offload Zion Williamson and just say, clean slate. We're building around our number 2 pick here, and we're okay with sending back some picks from Milwaukee if we move off of Zion and kind of reformat this entire organization with the new front office coming in and replacing David Griffin under Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver. I could see them in a trade, working with Milwaukee Bucks to replenish those picks that they traded. But I do think that the Houston Rockets, if they get the number 2 pick, they had Reed Sheppard last year, weren't willing to play Reed Sheppard too early in the development for him to be relied upon in a championship setting. I think they would have a stockpile of options for the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes.
That's going to be the number one topic for damn sure, if that's what we see on Monday night. I can't wait, Tom. Lottery night's one of my favorite nights of the year. Just so fun seeing those envelopes get pulled out. It is so damn fun. Tom, thanks for joining me tonight, man.
You got it, man. Have a great weekend.